All right, everyone, welcome in to episode 55 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is the edition being recorded on December 14th, 2022, only 11 days until Christmas. As always, I'm live from China, Tennessee, United States, and my name is Nick Hill. And joining me, as always, from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is my dear friend Gustavo Tomazeli. And he should pop up
Hey,
here any moment. There you
yeah,
are.
I'm here. I'm here. Hey, so good to talk to you and have another episode of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. The only podcast talk about two different countries, but all sports on and off the field. And definitely going to start with something that happened off the field, but with major impact on the field, especially on the college football side, because on Monday, 61-year-old Mike Leach, the current head football coach of Mississippi State and former head coach of Washington State and Texas Tech, has passed away. And, we're going to start reflecting his legacy in the sport, his time, on and off the field. And I just want to, first of all, send the thoughts and prayers to his family, of course, because I know all of us in the world of sports are mourning, but definitely the family goes first, because that's the one that are closest to him.
Yeah, and definitely the same goes to not just his family, but his team. Like the players that he recruited to go there, the players that spent, spent all their time with them, training and getting ready for these games. Because, you know, when you're part of a team like that, it's not just about the games that you play; it's about the relationships that you build. Because I know I was reading a story about how Mike Leach he has or had a tradition. It's going to be weird to have to talk about him in the past tense, but he had a tradition where he would have a movie night with his team before every single game. And I was reading that a couple of players said that was one of their favorite things about being with Mike Leach is having those bonding experiences with him. And he's had, think about all the players he's had over not just his 21 years as a head coach, but all the way of his time back to Valdosta State. And he really had one of the most unique stories ever. But we'll get to that in just a second. But kind of back when I was saying, it's obviously thoughts prayers go to family, his friends, his team, his players, that anyone who's coached with, anyone that's had an impact on him. And we have a personal connection with him at Tennessee. Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel, he was a JUCO player at Snow College in Utah when Mike Leach, who just got at the time had gotten hired as the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, discovered him, and they hit it off. I think Heupel said that they watched film together for like 30 hours on his recruiting visit, and that convinced Leach to bring him in at Oklahoma, and it's led him on the journey to where he won a national title at Oklahoma, and has ended up now as the head coach of Tennessee. And there's just so many coaches from Lincoln Riley at USC, Cliff Kingsbury with the Cardinals, Dana Holgerson at Houston. There's so many people he got their start underneath Mike Leach, and just there's just so many people in the college football community that have direct ties with them and were positively impacted by the presence of Mike Leach. And it really what's interesting when you think about Mike Leach's impact. It's just how unorthodox he was, how his story was unorthodox. He isn't your traditional coach. He wasn't necessarily a football player. Like he initially was going to be a lawyer. He, when he graduated college, went to law school. He graduated from college, but he decided he wanted to be a coach so much that he decided to go to Valdosta State and paired up with Hal Mum, who went on to be the coach at Kentucky in the 90s. And they decided to kind of create this, crazy form of offense where you don't really run the ball. You just throw the ball all the time, the air raid. And the philosophy behind it is just so fascinating because have you ever read about the philosophy behind the air raid? So where Leach and Mum get it comes from some, and I might be getting this wrong. It's The Art of War. Let me make sure. It's by Sun Tzu. It's an ancient Chinese philosopher, Sun Tzu. And there's a part in The Art of War where it talks about how if you're outmanned, let's say you don't have as many soldiers as the opposing army, or your soldiers not as trained or strong as the other army, What you then have to do is you have to find a way to spread them out to make them weaker. And that was the whole idea behind the air raid, is to make the playing field equal, because a traditional pro style offense for some of these teams just was never going to work. And that's why you saw Mike Leach really succeed at places like Texas Tech, Washington State, Mississippi State, places where they're not traditional powerhouses. And there's a reason why that philosophy has been widely adopted across football. And it's just crazy to think about, when he was earlier in his career, he was seen as an oddball in terms of his offense, but now his offense is so widely adapted. We look at Tennessee's offense this year. That offense is directly inspired by Mike Leach. Now it's different. Heupel's made some tweaks to it. It's a lot faster paced, but I mean, without Mike Leach, Heupel's offense doesn't exist, and his enduring legacy as a head coach is going to be all of the coaches he's left behind, all of the players he's left behind, and all of the schemes. And you're never going to be able to tell the story about college football in the 21st century without mentioning Mike Leach, because he is perhaps the single most influential coach we've seen in the past 40 years.
Yeah, and also I feel like the way he's been embraced in college football with three different conferences. He's been to the Big 12, to the Pac-12, and when he got the coaching job at Mississippi State, he was like, finally in the SEC. We're gonna see him, and we were literally 2 weeks ago talking about he won the most important game for him at Mississippi State. The Egg Bowl. It's crazy to think that his last game was Egg Bowl win in Oxford.
Yeah, and that probably was like a top 5 or 10 win ever for him, because I was thinking back through some of his biggest wins ever. And his biggest win ever is, I think, unanimously would be the 2008 win over number 1 Texas. Of course, Michael Crabtree gets the touchdown in the last second. I mean, that's one of probably the top 10 games ever. I mean, I was rewatching a condensed version of that yesterday, and that is one of my favorite games from my childhood. That's probably one of the first games I truly remember from like 2008. But I mean, there's a lot of other big ones. He got some big ones at Washington State over like Oregon and USC that were huge for that program. And at Miss State, I remember the very first game he had at Miss State was against defending champion LSU. And remember, they went down to Baton Rouge and put up like 700 yards passing on him and beat them. Of course, LSU wasn't very good that year, but still, that was a huge win for Miss State.
Yeah, it was the current national champions. They're still, a team that everybody thought was going to be viable.
Yeah, and the fact that he was able to go out there and win at all these different stops it's super impressive. I mean, I know, and I was thinking about this because I remember I had been critical of him this year, because I was critical of him a couple of weeks ago. If you remember that, I think it was after maybe the Alabama game, how I said, it just something feels off about the offense. Look, it isn't going to succeed. But at the end of the day, maybe when I was making that criticism, I was kind of forgetting, he is at Mississippi State, and there is kind of a ceiling to that program. And, the way they ended the year was really impressive. And it's a shame that we're not going to get to see how he would have continued to evolve that program, because I think they would have continued to get better. And yeah, I don't know what the ceiling would have been, but it's just a shame. Yeah.
And also the hardest part, I bet, is going to be one of the hardest, job fillings to fulfill, because now the Mississippi State AD has to go, as painful as it is, you're going to have to move on.
Well, they've already made their decision. They're going to go with their defensive coordinator, Zach Arnett, who's been highly sought after. He's been sought after for better DC jobs, but he stayed at Miss State. Of course, he had taken over in an interim capacity when he was initially hospitalized over the weekend. But now he is about to sign a 4-year contract. And what's interesting right now for Miss State is they don't have an AD. Because remember, their AD left for Auburn back over a month ago. So they're still searching for an athletic director. So this is coming during an athletic director search. And if you think about it in terms of timing, and obviously there's never a good time. There's never a good time for something like this to happen. I mean, it's absolutely tragic whenever it happens. But signing day is a week away. National signing day is a week away. The transfer portal is open right now. And as much, because I think in an ideal world, you would want to wait to name the next head coach. You would want to give your team time to grieve, and you would give yourself kind of some time to kind of think about, see how the players feel in a week or two about what they want to do. But you literally can't, because the rest of college football isn't going to stop for you.
Yeah.
Because they're going to still go out there. They're going to go recruit. They're going to go fill their rosters. And I think Mike Leach, because I remember, I don't know if you've seen this clip, but one reporter was asking Mike Leach, what would you want in your obituary? And he literally was like, man, I don't care. I'm going to be done. What use do I have for it? And, it's just, and we'll have to talk about like all the one-liners and stuff that he did. But Mike Leach, if he could talk to Mississippi State, I think he would say, go out there and get that next class. He would be like, don't warn me,
And he was so beloved. I mean, I don't ever remember a coach, making a harsh comment about him, having feuds about him, because he was so focused on his game, his players, his quirkiness. But he always focused on himself instead of the outside. He literally said that. I don't care about
he's the most coach. He's the most confident in himself that I've ever seen. There's some people that you can tell they're not confident in themselves and they're constantly defending themselves. Mike Leach didn't care. Like, he was himself. If he wanted to go out to a press conference and talk about Geronimo, a Native American who led multiple raids for the Apaches that he actually wrote a book about, he'd go out and talk about it. I know that I saw Clay Travis was talking about an hour-long podcast he did, not about football, but they were talking about the Tiger King, back in 2020. Remember, I don't know if you watched that show.
With like Tiger King, who didn't watch that show on the early COVID days?
Yeah, that's like that's peak early COVID memories. But but like he did an hour-long podcast about the Tiger King. Like, just Mike Leach could talk about anything, and when he went out there, he had points to say, and he made his points. And it's just and it's a unique voice, because there's really no other coach like that. Lane Kiffin sometimes can have points to say, but Nick Saban, I think, makes some good points sometimes. But everyone else, they're kind of PC coach speak, right? They're kind of making sure that they don't want to offend anyone. They don't want to offend the donors, and they want to stay to the football game, because most football coaches, they're only there really to worry about football. And Mike Leach had the intellect to comment on anything else, and most coaches just don't have that. And I don't know if we're ever going to have that again.
And I mean, and I was, watching, of course, a lot of content about him, about Mike Leach, but still one of the things that baffles me about it, he taught a class at Washington State, literally, I think it was a non-credit class about war and football, because that makes total sense, because if you think about it, football, American football, is what wars are about. Getting yards. Going on. Invading your opponent's field. To get what? To get all the other end, to get the point. On the war, you want to get the territory.
And remember, like how I said, how the whole concept of the air raid comes from the Art of War by Sun Tzu. Like the whole his football concepts come from war. And they talked about how, I was rewatching a 2008 60 Minutes clip from Scott Pelley, who's an alumnus of Texas Tech. He did a story on Mike Leach the year that they were insane back in 2008 with Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree, and about how, like, when he talks to his players, he often starts with a historical story and he wraps it back around to football. How he can apply any historical scenario back to something he wants to talk about in football. And the whole idea of him being the pirate and swinging your sword, but using your body as a sword. When you go into the right room, you're sharpening your sword, because you are the sword when you're out in the football field. And if your sword isn't sharpened, you're not going to accomplish what you want. And it's just the metaphors. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to take the swing your sword mentality, and that's a philosophy to have. Because everyone should swing their sword. Everyone should sharpen their own sword. And what is your sword? Whatever you need it to be to succeed. And it's just a highly inspirational guy because Mike Leach, when you look at it on the surface, you look at his profile, should have never been a major P5 head coach. A guy that never really played football, a guy who went to law school, a guy who started off his career at Valdosta State and was coming up with a completely new offense that no major program would have dreamed of running. And now, his concepts are being used in the NFL. His concepts are being used by the majority of the P5. We're seeing what it's done for our team, the Vols. We've seen what it's done for a lot of these other teams. I mean, Alabama, a lot of their concepts kind of come from that. Now, it just really is remarkable what he's done. And I know he never won any championships, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't, because he'll be remembered way more than a Gene Chizik who has a national title. He'll be remembered way more than even an Urban Meyer, I would argue. Because Urban Meyer won championships, but what is his lasting legacy? You can't remember anything he's necessarily said. He didn't necessarily invent a new offense. He did him and Dan Mullen did kind of invent the RPO, and not to take anything away from him, but the level of influence that Mike Leach has is frankly unparalleled in the history of college football, especially the history of modern college football. And I want to get your take on this particular subject because I know some people are debating this. So the College Football Hall of Fame, I don't know if you saw this, they have a requirement for any coach that gets inducted to have a 60% winning percentage. Leach is at a 59.6, and he needed to win 3 more games. And of course, he's not going to get the opportunity to do that. To me, it seems like they need to get rid of that requirement because it's clear that, if Leach had been in Alabama, at Texas, a school like that with top tier athletes, he would have won well over 60%. But, he was at schools where they didn't have a higher quality of athlete, but he still was winning a ton of games and won some iconic games, produced iconic, athletes, especially iconic quarterbacks. All those schools.
Oh, it's like, please, College Football Hall of Fame, don't be petty as the BBWAA, and you need to find some way, drop the requirement to 59.7. I don't know, but Mike Leach has to be in the College Football Hall of Fame for not only revolutionizing, a very key aspect of the game, which is an offense strategy, but also for how he was beloved at the game, how he impacted the game. I know he you know never went to a national championship or went to a playoff game. I know he went. I guess his peak was winning, going to the Cotton Bowl in 2008. I know he lost that bowl game, but I feel like his impact of game was so greater for just 0.3 something percent
Right.
take it away from being honored.
And also, too, the comeback story that he had, too, because remember, he gets framed for something that he didn't do. It's come out since that the story that Craig and Adam James met up at Texas Tech was not true. He did not abuse that player, right? So he gets fired for no reason, and he has to come back later at a really, really bad Washington State program. And what he was able to do there, and then eventually getting the job at Mississippi State. That's just a great story. Really, if you look at it, his story is a movie. And what's crazy is the last game he ever coaches is his first and only win at Miss State against their arch rival in Ole Miss. It's crazy how that story ended. And, it's just, and it shouldn't have ended there, but it did. And it's just.
He almost, and remember, he almost went to the Tennessee Volunteers back in 2017.
Good.
He
and
almost.
If we had handled that better, he should have been our coach. Now, would that have worked? I don't know, right? Because we were in a really crazy spot at that point. But my suspicion is if Heupel's offense could work here, I think Leach's offense would have worked here too. And I'll tell you what, imagine if we had been able to interview him instead of Jeremy Pruitt. Yeah. That would have been.
That's what I was thinking about. That's what I was thinking about, Nick. I know that Philip Fulmer made his decision, and he had a lot of insights and a lot of reasons to do it. But God, I wanted for him to come to Knoxville because I wouldn't miss one press conference of Mike Leach. I would have been imagine like
He would have been so much better than Jeremy Pruitt. Like, I don't know if he would have won titles, but he would have been way better than Pruitt.
no, imagine if he knew I was Brazilian. I was curious, like if he knows something about Brazil, if he wanted to talk
Why?
something.
He would probably go on some tangent about like the Brazilian War and independence or something.
Yeah, he want to talk about the Paraguayan War in 1864, or I know Brazil has not been to many wars, but I will definitely want to have some insight. I saw that he. I want to. Do you remember the he hates candy corn? I'll never forget about that.
The candy corn one. I think my personal favorite rant of his is on the fat little girlfriends. Like, I try so hard to get my players' attentions, but their fat little girlfriends steal the attention from me because they tell them everything they want. Or like, have the advice for weddings basically is elope. Do not go through a wedding. Um, man, he has some
Or
trouble.
on the coffee is bitter no matter what, so just
Yeah,
take it as this.
yeah, and honestly, he rarely complained about like stuff that happened in the game. Now, I did come across a clip in 2007 where he went on a tangent about the refs in the 2007 Texas game, but I mean it's legit because the ref in the game apparently was from Austin. So he's like, why do we have a resident of Austin refereeing a Longhorns game? Like that makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, in the World Cup, you try to be so careful about the referee you pick to not be any relationship to the countries that have been playing.
Yeah. Um, but man, he's a voice that's going to be sorely missed. Oh yeah, also I remember when he suggested that we should have a 128 team playoff for college football. Oh god, we're gonna all miss him in college football, that's for sure. And I look forward to reading more stories from people who knew him. Um, and as someone who deeply loves college football, I just want to thank him. From a post mortem because he's made college football super fun. His offense has made college football more fun. And obviously, the players and the coaches he's produced has gone on to heavily shape college football, including the Vols. And it's really think about the season that we've had in Tennessee. We wouldn't have had if you know if Mike Leach didn't find Josh Heupel in Utah back in 1999. So I feel
Well,
grateful for what Mike Leach has done for college football, and we're gonna deeply miss him.
oh, that's for sure. I mean, I even honor him on the radio show that been working here in Brazil because he transcends college football. I feel like he's a legacy for all sports, an inspiration about being so humble, but at the same time being so intellectual and like, do you know? I feel like he was so peace with himself when he was coaching because he was graceful for every time a coach opportunity. Because again, he didn't come from football; he come from a law degree. So he took every opportunity for granted. That's what I feel about him coaching. It's like he was enjoying it. That's why he wasn't, so bitter or so, you know, tense. I feel like, of course he had probably ups and downs, but I felt like he was graceful to be coaching football.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the time when Washington State, I think they upset Oregon and like they rushed the field and they were talking to him on the field and he's like, man, this feels like I'm at Woodstock, just not ever, there's just a lot less drugs involved. And he was along for the ride, man. And he seemed like a guy that really maximized his life. He didn't get to live as long as he should have. But we're not guaranteed any a length of time. And it's just a reminder to live every day to the fullest and swing your sword.
And so again, we in two countries, two Americas, all sports honor Mike Leach, and definitely I hope he is having fun up there, coaching football with some great legends there and talking about any stories that he had here
Yeah,
because we loved how his personality, his quirkiness, because of course, coaches tend to try to implement a style and act, in one way. He acted his way.
yeah, man. It's going to be tough, but definitely, as you said, we both send our condolences and our thoughts and our prayers to everyone involved with him, his family, his wife, his kids, his players, his fellow coaches, anyone that's ever been with him. And we'll miss you. Well, we will miss the Pirate.
That's for sure. But let's
But
move on.
but before we moved on to the World Cup, I know we briefly talked about the World Cup, talked about like Mid-State. They are going on to their GC, but just kind of thinking about that program moving forward. It is going to be fascinating to see what they do. Obviously they got the bowl game against Illinois on January 2nd, and what used to be the Outback Bowl. It's the RilaQuest Bowl or something like that. And they're going to have recruiting. They literally have a signing day next week. I just obviously football doesn't necessarily matter there right now, but at some point it's going to matter again. And just how do you move forward from this? Because it's just difficult.
Yeah, I feel like his players definitely are gonna, are gonna be the first ones to feel it because probably the fans are gonna feel more when the new season comes in September and Starksville, you know, and Mississippi State Stadium will be without air. Some are gonna, go to the bowl game. I guess they're still, moving forward. I haven't seen any reports they're canceling or anything like that.
They're
But
playing. They're playing the bowl game. And I do want to bring this up because I saw this report, and I don't know if this is true. Hold on, I gotta find what account said this, but there's a reporter claiming that some coaches through third parties are apparently reaching out to players through the transfer portal. Now this isn't confirmed, but if that's true, that is super dirty. Like you
oh,
should be giving these players like time to grieve. Like you should not be trying to like flip people because they're coach side.
oh my God, that's something. Good God, how low do you have to go to trying to find a new player? I mean, you know, again, he in football is a lot of like family. So when
Yeah,
the head coach passed away, a legendary one like that, and you want to trying to get the player to leave the program, that's so dirty and so insensitive.
yeah. I got the tweets from Steve Robinson, who works with Scouts. What? See, genespage.com. But I think he works with Scouts, I believe. Um, Anyway, apparently he's affiliated with Mid-State's programs. He says getting some reports of some college coaches working through third parties to try and get some Mississippi State football players to enter the transfer portal. If you're doing this, then you are a disgusting human being. If I get evidence to support this, I will make you famous. So obviously, we will see if he has evidence to back this up. You know, I just, yeah, I certainly hope that's not true
But
because,
but you kind of see how that would have been possible because again, as you mentioned, transfer portal is wide open and signing day is 1 week away. So it kind of makes sense in that point.
yeah, it makes sense from a pure football perspective. But man,
Yeah.
it's one thing if like any players are reaching out because of this, and you gotta let the players do what they feel like they need to do if they don't want to be there anymore because Leach is gone. Um, that's their decision. But coaches should not be initiating in this scenario at all. Like,
No,
let,
no.
let them figure out what to do as a team. They still have a game to play, and you got to let their new coach Arnett, who's been their DC this year, um, try to rally the troops around. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they do for this bowl game, how spring and fall practice goes, because I mean this is the type of thing that if you don't move carefully, will derail your football program. To have something sudden like this, and Mid-State is not a top tier program as it is. So they have to be really cautious moving forward in this situation. This is super tragic, and I hate to even bring up the football side of it, but that is something that the power. I'm sure the administration is behind closed doors considering and talking about, because that's kind of their job, is to make sure that program keeps going.
Yeah, and I mean, he was the 36th off best offense, and it's going to be hard for Zach Arnett to keep that level going. So again, the fans are going to have to be patient with him.
Oh, for sure, because he's never been a head coach before. We don't know who the OC is going to be, because Mike Leach was one of a kind. There's a lot of coaches out there who run a similar offense, but they didn't run exactly that offense. Um, I heard rumors that they may promote Steve Spurrier Jr., the son of Steve Spurrier. He was their wide receivers coach this year, the OC. They might bring in his former quarterback from Texas Tech, Graham Harrell. He's currently the OC at West Virginia, and they're thinking about maybe firing Neil Brown at the end of next year. So would he bail to go to Mississippi State? I think Mississippi State right now is a better job than West Virginia. So we'll just have to wait and see what Mississippi State does. And I'm sure they're going to be one of the, like, Mississippi State and Virginia next year. Those are two teams next year. They're going to come in with very heavy hearts next year. Because remember, Virginia, they canceled the rest of their season this year after they lost 3 of their teammates in the shooting. And their first game is going to be against the Vols in
Yeah.
So it's there's going to be a lot of some teams out there playing with some heavy hearts next year. But I guess let's.
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly go into that Jalen Hyatt topic while we're on college football before we head in the World Cup?
Oh yeah, and I was gonna say definitely, and especially I want to say it's like the first game is gonna be always the hardest, especially the home game. I feel like for Virginia, the first, of course, going to be hard because the players, getting dressed up again, but the first game at home feels more, you remember all the good memories, and it's home. I feel like that.
So the first home game for Miss State next year will be week 1 against Southeastern Louisiana, and then they get Arizona. For Virginia, obviously they play us in week 1 in Nashville. Then they come home and play James Madison, which James Madison's a really good team. So that'll be a big game for them.
Yeah.
So
do you want to go? I mean, there's gonna be some bowl games this weekend already. I feel like
yeah, we can talk some bowl games real quick. Well, so let's knock out all the college football stuff, and then we'll go into World Cup.
sounds good. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean the one caught up. I feel like interesting is the Las Vegas Bowl, Florida versus Oregon State. I can see an upset. Bill Napier, started the year with an upset, and I feel like this game definitely draws some attention because Oregon State finished on a high.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Oregon State. I feel like they definitely accomplished their goal. If you look at just raw talent, Florida has more talent. You always have to ask in these bowl games, what is the motivation level? And Oregon State, I do feel like will be more motivated here. But Billy Napier, he does strike me as a guy that can get his team motivated. And it's not like Florida's last game this year was terrible. Like they were in a really, really good game with Florida State. That was a great game. Just Florida State outlasted them. So I don't know. Is Anthony Richardson playing? I think. Did he opt out or not? And that's one thing you also have to keep in mind. It's all the opt-outs with bowl games. But if he didn't opt out, okay, he did not play. Okay, so you gotta remember it's gonna be Florida's backup quarterback here. I think Oregon State will win. Personally. Now, I will say this. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's gonna be Florida by 3 points.
I'll go Oregon State by 10. And then it reminds me, my friends and I were doing like a bowl pick'em. I gotta message them about that. I think some interesting games to watch here this weekend. On Friday, because it starts Friday, there's the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl in Orlando between UTSA and Troy. Both of these teams are ranked here. So that's very unusual for the first day of bowl games to have 2 ranked teams. That's going to be a phenomenal game because remember, Troy has been in some really big games in a Sun Belt play. UTSA upset Houston and has a really good football team. That one's going to be very high scoring. At first, team to like 40 might win that one.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I feel like it's gonna be the battle for outside of the power conferences to keep ranked. I feel like that's the motivation in this bowl game. Another good one is Louisville Cincinnati, especially now that Cincinnati has replaced his coach. I like there's gonna be a Fenway Park. It's always different.
With
You know,
Louisville's coach, remember Scott Sauerfield went from Louisville to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I was thinking about it that, but I didn't want to make that comment because I wasn't sure. But yeah, like you know, he was literally your former head coach, going to the new team playing you.
Yeah, but honestly, most Louisville fans are happy about it. I was talking to Jason about it, our friend Jason Larry. And they got what's his name? Jeff Braun for Purdue, who used to be the quarterback at Louisville. So everyone, a lot of the Louisville fans see that as an upgrade. And I agree with him. I think it is an upgrade. So they didn't have to fire him. So they have no buyout money, and they went and got the coach they wanted. So I think there's really no animosity, I think, towards Satterfield. They're still going to want to beat him. Because remember, this used to be a big rivalry game. The battle for the keg is what it was called, between Louisville and Cincinnati. They're not too far from each other. They're both Ohio River cities. So that'll be interesting. Also, this isn't technically a P5 bowl game, but you have the Celebration Bowl. It's the HBCU National Championship game. Deion Sanders in his last game with Jackson State versus North Carolina Central. Does Jackson State come out and play for their head coach, or did they have a letdown?
No, I think they're gonna come out strong and finish it with the title. I think if Deion Sanders wants to finish his legacy with the title.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't know when we're gonna do this next week, but just I'll go ahead and mention it. On Monday, Connecticut, the Huskies, they're back in bowl season. They're going to Myrtle Beach where they play Marshall, and Marshall they beat Notre Dame earlier this year. So that one is one I kind of want to check out.
Which is weird because it's the Myrtle Beach Bowl, but technically it's not in Myrtle Beach. It's in Conway, South Carolina, which is a couple of miles still from Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, you're not right on the beach, and it's going to be really cold in the continental United States next week. They're saying we might have lows for the next week in the single digits, so it's not exactly going to be tropical weather. So not fun. But,
I mean, another interesting bowl game is always the Idaho Potato Bowl.
oh, it's the Idaho Eastern Michigan, San Jose State. I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I don't know anything about any of these. Either one of these two teams. I don't think I've watched a single second of Eastern Michigan or San Jose. But,
I like because of all the it's the most quirky bowl ever. It's all about of course the beautiful stadium. The home of the Boise State. The blue field. There's always amazes me, but also it's all the quirkiness of the bowl. But I
just
think the
ask what some of these bowl games the attendance is going to be like. For example, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, Washington State, Fresno State at SoFi Stadium. Who's going to that game?
I guess there's people interested because there's tickets going for $37. I mean, I'm asking who is going to the Quick Lane Bowl between New Mexico State and Bowling Green at Ford Field in Detroit. Tickets are going for $2.
Who's going to that game?
And like 5 people. This is like the end zone. It's not like the 300 level. It's like literally you can be behind the field and for $2.
Yeah, I just realized Missouri plays before Christmas Day. That's sad. Any SEC team has to play their bowl game before Christmas Day. Is super sad. Let's see. Where's some other good one? Okay, what about this? Georgia Southern, Buffalo, and Montgomery, Alabama for the Camellia Bowl.
Whoa,
that's
I guess
there's
place. I guess there's people in the North Georgia who be interested. I guess not big of a drive, but
yeah,
and it's gonna be also two bowl games in the state of Alabama: Coastal Carolina and East Carolina. I guess it's like can be a state rivalry game in not farther
Bowl this year. Huh. That's interesting. What about one of my friends? I was talking to a friend of mine who said he had 2 free tickets to the Liberty Bowl between Kansas and Arkansas.
I would go. I think it's an interesting game. I feel like both teams definitely start the season high. Sam Pittman and Lance Leopold definitely had a good start season, but they both declined. And if you think about it, Kansas started the season 5-0, and then lost 3 games and lost six out of the last 7 games. And Arkansas instead start 3-0, then lost 3 straight, then had 2 wins, but finished losing 3 out of the last 4 games. Of course, one of those games were, versus Mississippi State. But I feel like for Sam Pittman and Lance Leopold, definitely can be a game that can, maybe I want to say change the trajectory, but definitely get a booster for next season and take a little bit of the sour away from the way both programs ended the season. Because if you think about it, both started really high and then had a really low season.
Yeah, but I think it's 2 different things. Because Arkansas had like top 10 expectations at the beginning of the season. Kansas had no expectations. So I still think Kansas is going to have more motivation. I think the Jayhawks are going to win that game. I think the Jayhawks will beat Arkansas.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
I would, but that I was probably we're gonna do midweek next week, so definitely gonna have time to talk about more about the bowl games. But definitely, Missouri, playing before New Year's Eve. I guess that's the only SEC team playing
Florida
before.
plays Saturday, so
Oh, that's
Florida and Missouri play before Christmas. I'm sorry, that's hilarious to me that they have to play before Christmas.
I guess it makes sense because both of them were on the bottom of their divisions, So
And
it
the
makes
SEC, if you don't know, if you're listening to this, if you play your bowl game before Christmas, it's embarrassing. You should never want to play you want to play around New Year's Day. You don't want to play at Christmas.
Yeah, definitely. It's because the later in the month of December you play a bowl game is more prestigious. The earlier is the more least prestigious.
Yep. So, but hey, at least, but hey, if I'm a Florida fan, I would still go, man. It's Las Vegas. You know, yeah, that would be a fun trip, at least. But maybe I got a feeling maybe a out of 10 will be into it. But anyway, we'll definitely have to recap some of these next week and see preview some of the next weeks. But before we wrap up our talk on college football, we do need to acknowledge some legends moving forward for leaving Tennessee. Both Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt, which, by the way, I don't know if we talked about Jalen Hyatt winning the Blitnikoff, but he is the best receiver in the country, and deservedly so. Because, yeah, I would have been super mad if they had taken that away from him, but they didn't, thankfully. So Jalen Hyatt, your Blitnikoff winner of the year. Also, shout out to the student section. Tennessee student section is the student section of the year. And Caleb Williams is your Heisman, but no one cares about the Heisman. But the reason why I bring Jalen Hyatt up is he declared today that he is going to declare for the draft. He will forgo his senior year, and he will sit down. He'll opt out of the Orange Bowl. Cedric Tillman, of course, he is a senior anyway this year, but he was also opting out of the Orange Bowl, and they're both getting ready for the NFL. And obviously, I wish they would play the Orange Bowl, but I totally understand. You got to save yourself for the NFL draft. You got to get that paycheck for your family. And both Hyatt and Tillman have given us a lot. I mean, Hyatt, what do you say? 6 catches, 207 yards, 5 touchdowns against Alabama. That alone is one of the top 5 performances in Tennessee football history, let alone the other great performances he put on this year and just the way his career changed at UT. The first couple of years he didn't play very well, but this year just something clicked and he was the guy. Cedric Tillman, he didn't have the senior year he wanted to, had a lot of injuries. And then once Hyatt emerged, it was hard for him to get back into that wide receiver 1 role. But, he was phenomenal last year, had a great year, and I think he's going to make for a really good NFL wide receiver. I think both of these guys will, and the connection that they both have with Hendon Hooker was phenomenal, and it was easily one of the most fun eras of Tennessee football I've ever watched. So I'm going to miss them both dearly in orange and white.
Oh yeah, I feel like both of them accomplished what they came in Knoxville. I definitely understand them foregoing their bowl game because let's be honest, as prestigious and interesting and great tradition and great matchup this year's Orange Bowl is, players need to think about themselves. You know, they have to think about themselves, and I feel like this situation makes sense because they already accomplished what they came, which is win football games on the regular season, try to get their teams to the national championship. Of course, that didn't happen, but and the only thing I can think about is like not playing to the semifinals and the national championship. But other than that, makes sense, and I hope they get higher picks. I imagine probably second or third round for both.
I think I mean, I've seen some people say mid first round for Jalen Hyatt, and I can think of a certain team that I maybe support that will probably be picking around this mid first round, whose receiving core absolutely sucks right now. Who could
Uh,
possibly use Jalen Hyatt?
so it may be a team that is inside the state that you live in.
Maybe. Hey, I'm just saying is if he got drafted by said team, he would be the starting wide receiver, no questions asked.
Uh,
Because my God, all right. um,
Yeah, we're gonna get to the NFL. Definitely, I guess you have some strong feelings
oh yeah, I'm not too happy right now with
with
the two
make
tone flu. I'm not
total.
very happy. But I'm kind of connected to this topic, right? Because we've seen they're both going off to the NFL draft right now. They're obviously going out. They're going to go make their bank. But we know NIL exists, so people are trying to make bank in college. But the state of Tennessee has now passed a new law, the TSSAA, the Tennessee High School Association for Sports, is now going to allow high school athletes to make money off NIL deals at the high school level. Do you think this is a good idea? Because my question is one, how many high schoolers are even going to be marketable enough? Like, I can't name you. The only high schooler I could name you in Chattanooga is Boo Carter, and that's only because he's being recruited heavily by Tennessee. I couldn't name you a single other football player in this city. Um, it's going to
Yeah,
be very interesting to see how this plays out.
I mean, locally makes sense because Nick, the high school football. I mean, I cover Knoxville high school football for several years. I mean, we both even covered one game together, and we saw how the local, the local team, I would say the local commerce, the local businesses embrace high school football. So they definitely would love to have the star player promoting their business. It's not probably gonna be the millions, but it's gonna be probably a couple thousand, to promote car dealership or like a dentist or something. But it makes sense because what's the best way to connect to any local businesses is through sport. Of course, a lot of don't have the money to get like an NIL deal with Tennessee player, but why not with the local? Like for example, the West Rebels that just won a state championship undefeated.
I think this thing's going to be huge in small towns. Think about Maryville. Like both Maryville and Alcoa, like Blount County, like those car dealerships along
Oh,
Alcoa Highway, they're going to be those high school players are going to be rolling into those car dealerships and making all kinds of deals. There's like a lot of small businesses in the Maryville area. I could think about like South Pittsburgh in Marion County. There's a lot of small businesses over there that would love to have a couple of Pirates, um, advertising for their business. Jasper, Tennessee has the Marion County Warriors. There's some Warriors there that would probably do good business advertising. So I think it's going to be huge for small towns. I think bigger cities, it's going to be a little more challenging for high school athletes, unless you're like a 4 or 5 star athlete. Now, there's going to be some, like a Nico Amiavelia. He could have made some big bank this year as a senior. Arch Mannon would have made some big bank this year. Think about LeBron James's son, Bronny. If he could make money off his like, think about all the money he would make. Like Dwayne Wade's son. Like, but I think you're going to have that connection already, and or just be so insanely good that you're like a 4 or 5 star athlete to make that money. But I feel like it's going to be really hard for the average kid to see any success off of this.
And again, that comes back to, probably something that athletes on the youth level deal with Brazil is when you get, you know, even could be a couple thousand or probably, a couple 100,000. I'm not saying the amount, but when you get, this kind of attention, this kind of, you know, promotion, definitely would change your mind. Because again, those are 15, 16, 17 year, kids that imagine how, you know, not easy it's going to be to deal with, being a promoter, but also, handling the kind of ego or, coaches are going to have to deal with players, making money off of football talent, but, they're still going to have to play football and, play for your team, not for yourself.
I remember there's a local journalist here in Chattanooga. His name is Stephen Hargis. He covers the high school football around here, and he said he had an anonymous comment from a local coach that if they pass this and they have that he will quit, that he doesn't want to coach anymore because he doesn't want to deal with this. And I could see like for high schoolers, and then we had the rumors during the college season of some locker rooms being kind of divided over NIL. Some of the players getting NIL deals, some of the players not getting NIL deals. I feel like in high school you're gonna have some significant, division if like your star quarterback is getting money because he's the star quarterback, but you're over here, you're the O lineman, no one knows who you are, and you're not getting anything. That could, and high schoolers, and we know they're not fully developed, they're not adults yet, they're still teenagers. That's going to cause some immense jealousy, especially in this TikTok era that we're in. You know, also that's actually a good thing too. They could probably most of these kids are probably going to make most of their money on like TikTok and stuff and like social media. If you think about it, because there's a lot of college athletes doing that right now.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I feel like that's why it was probably a lot of pressure to pass this law. It's like
Yeah,
to expect
I
this
think there's
model.
like a volleyball player at Fresno State that's making like 1 million of her TikTok. I don't know who she is, but a lot of people know. A lot of people apparently do.
Yes, and definitely, and I mean, it makes sense. A lot of people know her because if she's making that amount of money, on NIL, definitely has some name, image, and likeness on around her.
Yeah, I mean, I think my overall opinion is though, I think you should be able to profit off of your own image at any
Yeah,
point. Like because especially like in a sport like football, you never know when your next play is going to be your last. So if you are peak, like I think about a guy like Marcus Dupree. Have you ever watched that 30 for 30? Marcus Dupree. He was a legendary high school running back in Mississippi. He went to Oklahoma for a year. He was great, but he kind of had some mental issues. So he went back to Mississippi, played at Southern Miss, and just ended up not fulfilling his true potential because he would have been like an NFL running back straight up. Like he was as good as like Herschel Walker was and Bo Jackson was in the 80s. Like he was as good as those guys. Like think about this. He goes home after the last regular season game in Oklahoma in like 1986. Doesn't train at all with the team. Goes home, eats himself full, doesn't do any training. He walks back to the Fiesta Bowl, and he shows up and runs for 268 yards and a half, and that's it at Oklahoma. Like he was that good, but he didn't want to put the effort in, and now he's a truck driver. So, um, like guys like that who were incredible in high school, those guys could make so much money. And I think about like the ball, like Lonzo and LaMelo Ball in high school. Think about all the money they would have made with all their viral mixtapes. Zion Williamson, in high school, and all the money he made. So it would be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see how this works, and if other states decide to do this.
yeah, yeah. I feel like again, I agree with you in terms of players profiting out of that work, but it's a interesting road. Some players are gonna take better than others, and locker rooms are probably gonna have some issues. But again, I'm somebody that believes that you should profit off of your work. So I think that's a good step to go to.
All right. Should we go to college basketball next or World Cup? Do we just want to finish all the college stuff first? I guess.
Yeah, let's go all American topics, and then we move the World Cup into more Brazilian topics. Then we
That
go
makes
all soccer.
Yeah. Okay. So college basketball. Our Tennessee Volunteers got a huge win on Sunday against Maryland. A very tight game. Yeah, the Vols were dominant in the first half. They held Maryland to only 3 made buckets in the entire first half. The defense was as good as I've ever seen it. Second half, they didn't play nearly as well. Maryland comes back, and Tennessee has to survive a terrapin run at the end. But they did. They got a win over 13 Maryland. And now the Vols are number 6. They have to travel to number 9 Arizona. And right now, they're the second highest ranked team in the SEC. Alabama, they upset number 1 Houston on Saturday, and they jumped Tennessee. They're now number 4. Tennessee, right now, if you look at Ken Palm, they have the number 1 ranked defense in the country. Arizona has the number 1 ranked offense in the country, according to Ken Palm. So literally, strength on strength in Tucson on Saturday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. It's gonna be like what? You're like 2 hours ahead of me right now, right? So it's like 12:30 a.m.
Wow, on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll be early Sunday morning for you.
I guess I'll take it. I mean, I love to watch some late sports action.
Yeah, so the game literally will not end at probably 2:30 or 3 a.m. for you. Um,
Wow, that's late.
but this is gonna be an interesting game. I think it comes down to the consistency of our offense. We gotta do better at just finding ways to make buckets. It feels like a rinse and repeat, right? It feels like every Rick Barnes team, but this defense is so good that I think it's gonna help us mask some of our offensive issues in several games. But it's gonna win us a ton of games in the regular season. But it's too far out to think about March. But the question is, can we get good enough in offense between now and March to where our defense is where we can be good enough on offense, let our defense take us home?
Yeah, I feel like Rick Barnes teams are not always interesting, but they are very effective. But that's why my point is like if college basketball was like the Premier League where you have standings and the best one, probably Rick Barnes would have probably already 3 college football titles. But it's all about playoffs.
Yeah, it's a playoff sport, and we have not been able to win in that playoffs. But they're absolutely a very good team. They've overcome that loss to Colorado early in the season, and I'm very interested to see what they do against Arizona. A ton of big games this Saturday. There's like Indiana, Kansas, UCLA, Kentucky. There's Houston and Virginia. Just a ton of big games on Saturday. So a huge weekend of college basketball if you are into that. Now, to wrap up American topics, let's get into some NFL Week 15 picks. And as we go through the picks, and this is the first week, by the way, since I believe Week 4 that we have no bye weeks. So all 32 teams are in action this week, which is good because this is Week 1 of the fantasy playoffs. So a lot of money on the line this week for a lot of people.
So our picks, you got 8 games right. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So I beat you 8-6 last week.
Yeah, yeah. So we got another win for Nick Hill on the uh, our NFL picks. Let's go to the week 15.
All right. So game 1 here on Thursday, we have the 9-4 San Francisco 49ers with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, now Mr. Relevant, going to the 7-6 Seattle Seahawks, who after such a hot start, they are now fighting for their playoff lives. Finally, an interesting game on Thursday night. I know Amazon's got to be thrilled that they finally have a relevant game for once. What do you think about this one? This one should be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, it's the last chance for the Seahawks to make the playoffs. And how ironic is for Pete Carroll to be fighting for a playoff spot while boy Russell Wilson is struggling in Denver. So I'll take the Seattle Seahawks.
Ooh. I'll be honest. I believe in Brock Purdy. I think he is the real deal. I think he fits his offense better than Jimmy Garoppolo does. Some of the throws he made against the Bucks were really, really impressive in the way he's able to get the ball to the playmakers, and that's all he has to do because that offense has so many playmakers on it that you just got to take care of the football and be effective. I think the Seattle Seahawks, they're starting to become the team that I thought they would be. I mean, you got to give them credit. They are a lot better of a team than they should have been this year. Geno Smith has been a lot better than he should have been. But I think their Cinderella magic is kind of coming to a close here. So I'm going to go with San Francisco.
Next one on Saturday Night Football, as always when mid-December comes and it's like there's 4 weeks remaining, we always have the Saturday Night Football as the 4-8-1 Indianapolis Colts goes to Minneapolis to play the Minnesota Vikings, and you called it. The Lions beat the Vikings. Do you think they can bounce back?
I think the Vikings will bounce back. The Colts, right? I think the Colts had a little bit of a dead count bounce after rehiring Jeff Saturday, but now I think their season's basically tanked at this point. I think the Vikings will come home and win a comfortable one on a Saturday. That line at only 4 points is crazy. I think Minnesota will cover.
Yeah, I take the Vikings as well. If they need to win to show that, I think not winning that. I mean, they're a very comfortable lead, but they have to win the division. That's the year they gotta win the division.
Oh, for sure. They're gonna win the division. I mean, the nearest team right now is the Lions, and the Lions are 6-7. So I would take a complete collapse. Like the Lions would have to win out, and the Vikings would have to lose out. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I know, but of course, fans, they are confident about that, but they on the back of their minds, like, the Lions beat the Vikings.
Yeah.
The next one is on still Saturday in Cleveland, Ohio. The 5-8 Cleveland Browns plays with the 9-4 Baltimore Ravens, who got a interesting win last week. And Deshaun Watson, oh boy, he is in for a treat.
Oh, for sure. I think the first foremost, Lamar Jackson, he's questionable. I hope he's back for this. I think he's going to be back for this. But even if he isn't, Deshaun Watson, it's going to take him the rest of the season to get back into any mojo. And I think it's really going to take him another off season to kind of get into any rhythm. And I really think next year's we're going to find out if Deshaun Watson truly has anything left in the tank to be a star quarterback in this league. But I just don't think you're going to find it this year. I like the Ravens.
Yeah, I like the Ravens too. I feel like, the Browns, as you point out perfectly, they're thinking about 2023. Deshaun Watson, he can make 5 interceptions. He is not going to be benched because he's thinking about 2023.
Yeah.
Now back to Sunday. There's not going to be any early.
Yeah, there's 3 games on Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. There's 3 games on Saturday. Saturday night game is the 10-3 Buffalo Bills versus the 8-5 Miami Dolphins. Basically, if the Bills win the division, it's for them. But if the Dolphins win, it's going to be a close up because it's going to be 9-4, and the Bills going to be 10-4.
And this is going to be played in a snowstorm too.
Yeah, I was going to say 8 inches of snow. God, that's crazy.
Yeah. So with that in mind, Tua Tagovailoa is struggling crazy. Like he was 6 of 22 the other day against the Los Angeles Chargers. He looked horrible on that Sunday night game. I think that some of my concerns about Tua are coming back to fruition. It's almost like it's starting to seem like to me that Tua starts off the year really good, but he's almost like Cliff Kingsbury, where at the end of the year, it just seems like he doesn't play as well. That's something he's going to have to change if he's going to be a long-term franchise quarterback. And I don't think it's going to happen here in a snowstorm, that's for sure. I think Josh Allen will find a way to get it done. Again, the Buffalo Bills, and they'll essentially wrap up the AFC East.
Yeah, I know we basically only had one difference, but can't argue with you. I go with Bills too. Next one is the eliminated 3-10 Chicago Bears versus the already in the playoffs Philadelphia Eagles. And so that's interesting. It's literally the matchup between the only team eliminated versus the only team who already made the playoffs.
Yeah, well, that's in the NFC because also the Texans and the Broncos.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in the NFCs. I forgot to point that out, but that's the matchup of the only team that are in the playoffs in the NFC and the only eliminated team in the NFC.
Yeah, I think the Eagles will win this one fairly comfortably. I mean, what the Eagles did to New York the other day was one of the most impressive victories of the entire season. I thought that was going to be a way closer game, and the Eagles are just they're just that good. They are that good. Jalen Hurts right now should be the MVP. Their defense is really good, and they just and John Robinson. There's a reason why you were fired, buddy. There's a reason you were fired. But
Oh, and this reason has two letters and start with A and finish with J.
yep, A and J. Yep, a certain number, a certain receiver that is lighting it up for the Philadelphia Eagles. But yeah, they'll win again. They will win again.
I know we're going to talk about the Titans and how they screw up last week and about their game versus the Chargers, but how painful for the Titans fans to see AJ Brown having, an incredible season.
It is, and it's just infuriating. It was what it is because just like you didn't think this guy was worth the money he was asking for. I mean, we see the rest of the talent on the squad. I mean, where did the rest of our money go? We have subpar talent on the team. Our offense is a joke. I mean, but Josh Heupel is building a more talented offense in Knoxville, and it's college football. I'm convinced Josh Heupel's offense would score more points per game in the NFL than the Titans would. Just I'm gonna be real, you know.
Yeah. So let's move on to the NFC South matchup between the 4-9 New Orleans Saints versus the 5-8 Atlanta Falcons. I don't know I don't know what to make of this game. Of course, probably is one of the last chances of both of these teams to make the playoffs. Like how sad that it looks like the NFC South might have another team that's going to be a below 500 to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's I don't know. This division is just not been a very fun one to watch. Of course, the Falcons are coming off a bye week. They're going to have Desmond Ritter start making his debut at quarterback in this game. The Saints are coming off that really bad loss to the Bucks. I don't trust Desmond Ritter in his first start on the road, so I'm going to go with the Saints. And but here's the thing, these last couple of games are huge for the Falcons, not necessarily for making the playoffs, although that's still in reach. They're only a game behind. You know, you're going to find out if Desmond Ritter is going to be your quarterback of the future or not. Because if he comes out and plays really well, there's no need to take a quarterback next year. Because I did see a mock draft today that had them picking Will Levis next year, which I've said numerous times would be it's going to be a big mistake for anyone who does it. But if Desmond Ritter comes out and sucks, then you're going to probably have to go out and get a new quarterback. So huge game for Ritter, huge game for the Falcons.
It's like a test, like if he can make to next year or not.
Yep. But I'm not sold. I think the Saints are going to win here.
So next one is the 6-7 Detroit Lions versus the 7-6 New York Jets with still Mike White. I know New York, had a two game losing streak, but both of those games were on the road, and now New York come back to MetLife Stadium, and Robert Saleh just announced that Zach Wilson will be the backup again.
Here's the Jets to me. Now, obviously, they got a great defense. They got some great young talent. But, man, that quarterback situation is catching up with them. It's catching up with them, and the Lions are playing as confident as any team in the league right now. I'm going to go with the Lions to pull off this win.
Yeah, I'm still thinking my G-E-T-S, Jets. I'm thinking my New York.
Yeah, they need to win this one if they want to go to the postseason. That's for sure.
The next one is the 5-8 Carolina Panthers coming off a 2 game winning streak versus the 5-8 Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm gonna go with the
Um,
Panthers. Panthers are playing really good football right now. Like that they look like a completely different team. And I think here at home they're gonna find a way to get another one. And the Panthers don't look out. They're only a game back too with the Buccaneers. Could they play their way into the postseason?
Matt Rule is asking himself in Nebraska and be like, how can I not make this team play?
Yeah, and their quarterback to start off their year with is now leading game-winning drives with another team. So, you know,
Yeah, that's true.
I think this
Uh,
last one is maybe the most interesting of the weekend. One of the most interesting of the weekend.
yeah, and both teams are below 500. So,
Wait, what game is up? Oh, yeah, because I'm looking at Cowboys and Jaguars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I was still finishing the Steelers and Panthers. It was going to be interesting
Oh,
because even though both are below 500, I feel like they're still kind of hunting for the playoff spot because of the way the divisions shape up. But this game definitely is interesting. The 10-3 Dallas Cowboys going to Jacksonville, Florida to play the 5-8 Jaguars. I mean, I was disappointed. I was expecting more from the Cowboys. I know they had a last minute drive. They got themselves a touchdown. But do you think that was concerning the way the Dallas played versus Houston?
yeah, they played significantly down to competition. Um, And I don't know, they have been increasingly inconsistent. But and this is definitely going to be a tricky one because Jacksonville's playing a lot better. Trevor Lawrence looks like a first round draft pick right now. Like he's looking really good. But I think Dallas is going to come out and play a lot better this week. I just have a hunch they're going to come out and they're going to win by a touchdown or two. I think they're going to come out and take care of business.
So you got the Cowboys, like
Yes.
me. Yeah, I picked the Cowboys too. I don't know. Is this going to be the year? We never know. Last game on the 1 p.m. Eastern time window, the 10-3 Kansas City Chiefs goes to Houston to play the 1-11-1 Houston Texans. The thing is going to be another L for the collection that the Houston Texans have. I mean, they're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 game losing streak.
Yeah, I think they're going to add another one here. And the Chiefs, they got up to a 27-0 lead last week, and they almost let Denver come back. They're kind of an alarming game, and the Texans are just coming off almost upsetting the Cowboys, a game they arguably should have won. But I think that was a fluky game. NFL teams every now and then they're going to show up and play, but I think the Chiefs here will take care of business.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I agree with that too. I feel like this time of the season maybe teams would play fluky because of the kind of exhaustion and injuries that those teams have to deal with.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So now to the 3 p.m. clock window, the 3-10 Denver Broncos plays the 4-9 Arizona Cardinals. I call this the disappointment bowl.
Yeah,
I
I
was
mean, before the season, this would have been an amazing game,
Yeah,
but not anymore. I mean, Kyler Murray's not going to be there. Russell Wilson got hurt last week. You know, I will say this: I think Denver finds a way to win here, but there's going to be 5 people at this game. It's just a season that both of these fan bases are going to want to forget, and I think both of these coaches will be finding employment elsewhere after the season.
I take the Cardinals, but I think what's more in both of them, another fact, one already has a big contract with a quarterback, Russell Wilson, and Kyler Murray is going to start his new contract, which also has huge implications for salary cap. So both those teams are a little bit trapped.
Oh yeah, they're going to have to do some significant restructuring. I think both these teams are going to have to do some rebuilding.
So next is the 5-8 Las Vegas Raiders versus the 7-6 New England Patriots. I mean, I feel like the Raiders definitely kind of gave that game away to the Rams, but do you think they can bounce back?
No, I look. Here's the thing with the Raiders: they have two games. The Colts and now the Rams. Two games they should have never lost, but they did. And honestly, at a certain point, that catches up with you. And this team, I feel like, is on the verge of quitting. And the Patriots, that's a team that's playing hard. They may not play great, but they play hard. And I definitely trust Bill Belichick to school his protege in Josh McDaniels in Vegas on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna pick the Raiders. I think they can bounce back. I think they can win. I'm gonna go with the Raiders. So next one. Now it's I'll give space because the 7-6 Los Angeles Chargers face the 7-6 Tennessee Titans. But before we get to this game, what the world happened on Nissan Stadium last Sunday?
Well, we have subpar offensives outside of King Derrick Henry. Our offensive talent is subpar, not of NFL quality. I mean, when you're running, if you look at our receptions list, okay? Austin Hooper, Robert Woods. Okay, those are two NFL level talents. But Nick Westbrook-Akine, Racy McMath, Julius Chestnut, Chris Conley. You have CJ Board out there running routes. And you could have kept AJ Brown. It makes no sense. What the way that this offense was constructed makes no sense. It's like we are relying solely on Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry lost 2 fumbles in this game. He did not play his best game at all. And we got to be honest, he is getting older. And we're not going to be able to continue on this path forever. And what's even more disturbing is, yes, our offense has been struggling, but this defense, what happened to this defense? This defense was awesome for the first 2 months of the season, but we let Trevor Lawrence walk in the Nashville and come out with at 30 of 42, 368, 3 touchdowns. We let Evan Ingram, this dude with the New York Giants couldn't catch a ball. This dude was dropping balls every week, and this dude gets 11 catches, 162, and 2 touchdowns. Like, what are we doing? It's like the team quit after John Robinson got fired. It's what it looked like to me. Like they started turning over the ball left or right, and at a certain point later in that game, they just gave up, and that is really disturbing because Mike Vrabel teams usually never do that. And I hope that's just a one-off, and they come out and they play, really hard against a really good Chargers team. That should have a lot better record, but they can't get out of their own way with some of the decision making. But man, this season it feels like it could begin to derail for the Tennessee Titans, honestly, because you look at the rest of their schedule, they still got to play the Chargers, we still got to play the Cowboys, we know we have the Texans next week, but we go to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville just dominated us. So I can't come out here and say, oh yeah, we're definitely beating Jacksonville and Jacksonville. I can't even say for sure we're going to beat the Houston Texans next week the way we're playing.
Wow, that's being very pessimistic.
Yeah, look, I bet there's a reason why I've been lowballing the Titans all year, because we've scored more than 24 points in a game once. Like, you don't win in the modern NFL if you can't score. I'm sorry, you just can't. And I don't know how we won 5 games in a row. I was looking back at it, and unless our defense shows back up, and against Justin Herbert playing the way he is right now, I find it very hard to believe their defense is all of a sudden going to come back into form enough to allow our offense to catch up. I just don't see it happening here. I think Justin Herbert will have a big day, and the Chargers win. And this Titans team, I'm going to say it, I think we may have to start considering blowing it up and starting a rebuild.
You get Jalen Wyatt.
Jalen Hyatt. We desperately need Jalen Hyatt. We need Traylon Burks back off of IR. But we might have to we may have to rebuild in that we may have to go away from Derrick Henry. We might have to go away from Ryan Tannehill and just really start over. And I hope Mike Vrabel is still a part of that, but I don't know if he's going to be. I, I think the timing with firing while I don't disagree with the decision to fire Robinson, maybe you shouldn't have done it in the middle of the season. I think that was a mistake. But, hopefully we find a new GM who's able to turn over this roster. Because here's the thing. If we can stay healthy on defense, we're fine on that side of the ball. But we need a total and utter rebuild of the offense. We just have to start over on offense because this isn't working. We need a new OC. We need a new offensive line, and we really need a new quarterback as well. So, and a whole new receiving core, and eventually you're going to need a new running back because Derrick Henry, as great as he's been, he's aging, and we have to start over on offense because that was atrocious. That was just that second half of offense was some of the worst that I've ever seen in an NFL game.
So I guess you got the Chargers with all the pessimism.
Yep.
I'm going to be hopeful. I picked the Titans.
I would be beyond shocked if we come back and won on Sunday. But that would be a very Titans thing to do. So I'm not saying it's impossible because that would be a very Titans thing to do. But, man, I certainly hope there's some soul searching going on in Nashville this week.
Yeah. To finish up the 3 p.m. Time slot, the 6-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the 9-4 Cincinnati Bengals, and definitely bring up how Tom Brady has been struggling week in, week out, and it looks like he is not going to continue in Tampa because the way he was blown out of the stadium on Sunday in Santa Clara, that was something I think Tom Brady is not going to take lightly.
No, this has to be it for him. I don't see how he can continue beyond this year. He's 45. Like, the fact he's playing at all is insane, but he clearly isn't playing at a high enough level anymore. And I think all the off the field stuff is catching up with him. And the Bucs as a whole are just not anywhere near as good as they were. So I really think that the Bengals here are just a way better football team. They're way better offensively. They're way better defensively. I think the Bengals are going to win by at least 10 points.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bengals too. I don't think it's going to be a tight margin. It's going to be.
I think we lost Gus briefly. I think you're back. You froze up on the pick, so I guess you're picking the Bengals. All right. So let's go to Sunday Night Football, a game that we just saw 2 weeks ago between the New York Football Giants and the Washington Commanders. They're both 7-5-1, and that one tie was a 20-20 tie between those two. So, Gus, are we actually going to get a winner this time between these two?
I'm going to pick the tie again.
I'm going to pick the tie. That is bold. These two teams feel very similar. I almost kind of want to pick the tie too, just as a meme. I do think the Commanders are going to find a way to win it at home, but I think it's going to be another close game. I wouldn't be shocked if it goes to overtime. These two do feel like carbon copies of each other, and it comes down to who plays better between Daniel Jones and Tyler Heinicke.
That's true. I feel like there's going to be not the best quarterback matchup, but definitely the most even one.
Oh yeah, it's at least it's an interesting Sunday night game. I will give them that.
But how about this Monday Night Football game?
I cannot wait until they start flexing Monday night games because, man, I'm gonna be honest. I skipped the Monday night game this week. I totally skipped it, and I may do it again here.
5-8 Green Bay Packers versus the 4-9 Los Angeles Rams. Great story about Baker Mayfield. I don't know if he's gonna stay in the roster or not, or how long he's gonna. But for him to go learn the playbook in hours and still show and have a good performance, that's gutsy.
It really is. And it shows he still has a lot of potential. He's just been in some bad situations. The Cleveland Browns were not behind him. Carolina doesn't have that good of a roster. I still believe that Baker Mayfield has a future somewhere, but he's just got me in the right scenario. And I don't know. Well, we'll see how long Matthew Stafford wants to stick around in LA. Could Baker Mayfield have a spot there? That'll be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what he does the rest of the season here. Of course, going to Green Bay. Green Bay is obviously one of the most disappointing teams in the entire league this year, but they are coming off a win in Chicago. Um, Aaron Rodgers is still playing because, as you have said, yes, he is too egotistical to let Jordan Love get any playing time. Um, I am going to go with the Packers here at home, but I do wonder if they lose this game, is it then going to force Matt LaFleur's hand to start playing Jordan Love?
And I think that's exactly what's gonna happen. I picked the Rams to win it, and I think after this game, finally they're gonna come to their senses and be like, "Let's rest our starting quarterback and give some play time to our backup that we went highly on him." That's the thing. Jordan Love was drafted at the first round when Green Bay already had a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I'd be playing him already, but you can't make poor old Aaron Rodgers mad. All right, let's get into some World Cup, and unfortunately for us here on Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, my country was knocked out uh, a week before last, and you called it, Gus. Brazil cannot get past a European team. Just talk about from your mind what happened in the Croatian game, because you guys almost had it. You guys had it, and Croatia broke your hearts at the end.
I mean, the biggest meme kind of on social media is like, how can Brazil, leading 1-0 with 3 minutes left, had not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, 7 players on the offensive side of the ball, and giving a counter attack to we'll say you know would say a team that couldn't even hit a shot, a team that was ineptable to get any type of offensive action. I mean, I praise their strategy to kind of keep possession and, had a good defense, good performance. And I know Jovasic has a great game on the left side of the offense. But again, how can Brazil, with 3 minutes left, had 7 players on the opposite side of the field? And if you think about it, the play starts with Pedro trying to get a counterattack, but he passes, I think, to the player that was least likely to get the ball and had the most Croatian players around him to get the ball. I I wanted to be wrong about my feeling. I wanted to, not be correct about it, but again, Brazil is 0-5 against European teams in the World Cup, and it just makes it think about it how much Brazil has to overcome to finally, because to win the World Cup, Brazil basically is going to have to end this streak. There's no way Brazil not going to face any European team to get a title, so they have to find a way to go and get this, I say not out of the way, but I feel like finally surpassing this a nightmare that has been playing European teams, and with all that different eliminations, like 2006 with the set piece, 2010 on goal and a corner kick, 2014 5 minutes, like 6 minutes 5 goals, no, 6 minutes 3 goals, first half 5-0, total 7-1, and then 2018. 30 minutes with total distraction, an own goal, and a counter attack. And now, 3 minutes left. They couldn't, kept the ball possessed, and they couldn't, stop the counter attack. And congratulations to Croatia, but their happiness lasted just a couple of days because yesterday, they would destroy Bar Argentina. I mean, the most saddest thing about this is it was supposed to be Brazil Argentina in the semis. Lionel Messi versus Neymar. What a match! What an epic matchup that never happened.
Yeah, you call it right. Like Croatia, just they play more disciplined. They were able to make the shots when it counted. And um, what's interesting is during the penalty kicks, how much more calm Croatia seemed in taking their kicks.
I think because that's the advantage to have a lot of veteran players. They were used to be on this kind of situation. Brazil players weren't, and especially how you know I feel that there was so cowardice to Rodrigo for his first World Cup, one of the youngest players, to throw him under the bus for him to get to kick the first penalty.
Yeah, it seems like you would go with someone more veteran in that situation. It just I don't know. Obviously, I don't know if Tito is going to be retained or not moving forward.
The coach,
Yeah,
he announced before the World Cup, way before, he was gonna resign. He was not gonna keep. He was not gonna stay as a coach. I feel like his tenure that lasted 6 years was average. I give him a B minus, C plus. He got one. We can say he got two titles because the Olympics. All credit to him because how he intervened with that team, even though he wasn't officially the coach. He got also the 2019 Copa America Cup in Brazil, and then but he lost the 2021 America Cup also in Brazil to Argentina in Maracanã. So I feel like he was average. I was with all how high expectations he had when he was finally hired back in 2016. He left a lot of disappointment. The next coach got to be someone from the Brazilian league. I want to see people saying Guardiola or Ancelotti. I just don't see it. I just don't think they want to leave their European teams to go coach Brazil. They don't have any connection to it. Either is going to come down to three names: Abel Ferreira, Renato Gaúcho, the former Flamengo, Abel Ferreira, current Palmeiras coach, Renato Gaúcho, current Grêmio coach and former Flamengo coach, and Cuca, former Atlético Mineiro coach. I think it's going to come down to those three names. I mean, and if I were to pick, even though a lot of journalists saying that it's got to be a Brazilian coach, but Abel Ferreira has been a phenomenal job at Palmeiras. Like with 2 years within the team, 3 seasons, he got Libertadores, two Libertadores titles, national championship, state championship, Brazilian Cup. That's phenomenal. He deserves a shot. But I one name that has been thrown out, I don't see it. Fernando Diniz. He has some interesting. He's kind of the Mike Leach, a little quirky, very stubborn with his ideas, especially the way possession ball. But he still never won a major title. Only won titles with the Votorantim and Paulista de Jundiaí, which are small teams here in the state of Sao Paulo. But I think moving forward, Brazil has to call more players from the Brazilian league. I think they're relying too much on the young European talent. Sometimes just does gonna cut it out.
yeah. Because here's the thing: when I think of Brazilian soccer, I think of the swag. I think of the samba. I think of that's what Brazilian soccer should. And it feels like
Yeah.
the last few World Cups, especially when they get later on and play those European teams, they get. I feel like they try to play the European style, and that's not what Brazil should be doing. Brazil should be playing Brazilian soccer because Brazilian soccer has been so effective for so long.
I know it's not only about playing Brazilian soccer. I feel like it's more about you know trying to play with more rhythm. And of course, with the last time Brazil won the world title, I think this team was unbelievable. You had not one but two best players of the year in their roster, Ronaldo and Rivaldo. But you also had a young star uprising Ronaldinho, also another young star Kaká. The defense was loaded, especially the goalkeeper side of it. I think this team in 2026 is going to be stronger, and I think that's they're going to finally get the title. It's like my prophecy. They won in 1994 after 26 years without after 24 years without a title, and the final was in United States. The scenario repeats again.
Yeah, and that would be incredible. And of course, obviously, historically, when the World Cup's over on this side of the world, South American teams tend to be at their very best. So I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. And I think a lot of that young talent's going to get better. I mean, of course, Thiago Silva, you aren't going to have him in 4 years. So hopefully
And
they'll be forced to put someone.
hopefully not Daniel Alves, please. God. Well,
Yeah,
please.
Alves. I got him confused with the Spanish player.
But God, Daniel Alves, please go enjoy your retirement. Brought to you by Sao Paulo Football Club. Never saw such a great retirement plan where Sao Paulo has to pay him monthly. It's like Daniel Alves has kind of the Bobby Bonilla contract. He's getting paid even though he doesn't play for the team anymore.
That's ultimate. That's an ultimate win for him. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, getting paid to do nothing. I mean, that's a dream of everyone. I wish I could get paid for doing nothing, but
Me too. I would love to have what we call here the Daniel Alves retirement plan.
yeah, it's not, honestly the only other people that probably get that are politicians. So
yeah,
but anyway, so just in terms of the World Cup as a whole, we know our final now. Argentina and France. Obviously, for Brazilians, you don't want to see Argentina there. And Lionel Messi is one step away from winning a World Cup and cementing his legacy completely. France trying to go back to back, and I don't know, has anyone ever gone back to back?
Brazil 58-62. 58-62 Brazil.
Okay, so France trying to be the first one since 58-62 Brazil. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game. This is going to be a classic.
And the last time a team went back-to-back finals was also Brazil, 1994 and 1998.
Yeah, and then when France beat Brazil, 98, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing is, I feel like FIFA is kind of, wants Argentina to win and Messi to get the title. I'm not saying they're going to, do something, sketchy, but if the refs have any doubts, it's always pro Argentina. I mean, I think the penalty happened. A lot of people controversy. I feel like saying it's not, but I think this Argentina. I mean, credit to Scaloni. After losing to Saudi Arabia, he was able to reshape his team to be more effective, and Messi to be more, better used. To not have to get the ball in the right places. So credit to the coach Scaloni to rebuild after losing on the opener.
Yeah, and the way of course, actually that penalty was very questionable, but then from there they just dominated Croatia. Like I did not see that coming. And no shame on Croatia. They don't. I mean, Luka Modric is a phenomenal player, but he's not Lionel Messi, right? And just the talent that Argentina has, I just feel like they're better than Croatia.
Croatia tried to play the same style as Brazil, and it probably would have worked. But when you score early in this World Cup, we can give a lot of examples on games. The landscape changes completely. Completely.
Yeah, like Morocco, Portugal, and we'll have to get in that into just a second because, man, Portugal, they went out sad. They went out very sad. And the comment about maybe Argentina getting a lot of calls, I felt that way about Portugal. I remember messaging you being like, wow, they're giving some favorable calls to Portugal right now. Because they're wanting Ronaldo to move on.
Oh yeah, but I think Ronaldo did not want to move on because his attitude is just pathetic. I feel like, and Fernando Santos, I think he is not going to be the coach anymore, and I, I don't know if I would fire him because he tried to handle this Cristiano Ronaldo situation, the best he could have done. And I think Jose Mourinho is going to be the next Portugal coach. I think he definitely wants to cement his legacy, and he's beloved in Portugal, and that's a job that I feel like would kind of cement Jose Mourinho, because when he was always summit for his job, it was always he was on the high profile teams like Real Madrid or Chelsea, but now he's in Roma. And Roma is like a second tier kind of European team. I feel like Jose Mourinho is going to take the Portugal job.
Yeah, I think that obviously losing to Morocco, a change is going to have to be made, right? Because Portugal had an ultimate chance, right, to at least advance to the semis and get a shot at France. I don't think they would have beaten France, but they would have had at least a shot at him. But to not even score a single goal against Morocco, that's not going to be acceptable for any European squad. But and we'll have to talk about Morocco here in just a second. But yeah, that was a disappointing finish there for Portugal. Of course, we had the Netherlands. They lost to Argentina. I think that wasn't like an embarrassing loss for them. I think the Netherlands they're played pretty well this World Cup, so I think they have a chance moving forward to compete.
They never won a title, so that streak continues.
Yeah, and England, it is not coming home. Man, that last because here's the thing: outside of U.S. and Brazil, I probably root for England as like my third team. And that was just frustrating as crap to watch on the stretch. I couldn't imagine being like an actual like English person watching that. Harry Kane, man, how do you miss that penalty in the 84? Just a brutal miss against France. They should have won that game.
I think it was whoever would have passed that game would have deserved it. As you said, you talk about France and Argentina being a classic matchup. France and England was a total classic matchup.
Oh, that was a great game, man.
That was a great game.
I was gutted though for
the France deserved to win. It probably should have been an overtime win, but again, great matchup because this World Cup was a lot about heroic performance, but not really classical games. And definitely England and France, that was emotion, talent, all mixed in one. And I feel like I don't know if Southgate's going to continue or not. I don't know. Like he's doing a great job. He's keeping England playing on the high level, but how long the FA and the British fans are going to tolerate him with expectations and disappointment?
Well, I mean, we do also have to remember too. England has literally never won a World Cup outside of England. They haven't won one since 1966. I mean, are there expectations? Because obviously we know England is, one of the top powers in the world. London's one of the most important cities in the world. Because of their political state, does the English football team's expectations get inflated? I mean, I don't know. Like, I almost feel like that's partially when you look at what England's actually done as a football country versus what their expectations are. I think they may have one of the most overinflated expectations. And, they've had one of their best periods ever over the past 4 years. To a semifinal appearance, a quarterfinals appearance, a Euro 2021 finals appearance. I mean, they've played really well, but still, there's no trophies to show for it.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Harry Kane is the symbol of this team with great performance, but no titles to show for. Like Harry Kane has never won a title with Tottenham. So
as I read someone say, this team is basically just Tottenham. Great team, but they never win anything.
That's
they
true.
Always find a way to choke.
Yeah, that's the most Tottenham way to do it.
Yeah.
I think my prediction is Argentina is going to take it home. Give me Argentina.
I'm going to agree. I like Argentina as well. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. I'm going to go Argentina 3-2 and extras.
Whoa. So I think you really want to go those, games that's going to be all like a high scoring game.
All-time classic. And real quick, just let's commend Morocco. What a run for the Morocco.
What a run.
What a run. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I didn't think they played necessarily bad today, but they clearly didn't have.
Again, Nick, France scored early. It changed completely the way that Morocco wanted to take that game. But
because Morocco wanted to try to get that thing to extras. That was probably their shot, unless you found a way to get a counterattack at some point. But they knew they didn't have the horses, so they were going to try to find a way to make that game ugly, and they couldn't. But man, it really is crazy because I remember when we first looked at the groups and stuff, I was like, there's going to be a Middle Eastern team that finds a way to make a deep run. And I didn't think it was going to be Morocco, but, you got to give them credit. And that's one they'll never forget.
First team from the African continent to get to the semifinals.
Yep. I mean, just a great performance. And it shows that the African teams, there's always been a ton of talent there. It's just they just usually don't have the resources of the European and South American squads. And I hope over the coming decades that changes because I think eventually, if you think about 2010, we had an African team finally make it to the quarterfinals in South Africa with Ghana. We finally have one making it to the semis of Morocco. How long are we off away from seeing an African team making it to the finals? And what country is going to do it? Because
Yeah.
one day it's going to happen. There's going to be like a 16 seed beating a 1 seed, like we saw with UNBC a couple years ago against Virginia in college basketball. It's going to happen.
It's bound to it. The way soccer is transitioning, and I feel like those African teams are getting more caught up to it. I think it's going to be inevitable. I think winning a World Cup might take 4 or 5 World Cups, like a 20, 25 year cycle, but I think it's going to come. But congratulations to the Moroccan national team. I think they did better than any fan expected, and hopefully they beat Croatia in the third place matchup on Saturday to at least get the bronze.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that real quick. Who's your pick there? I'm going to pick Croatia, but I think it's going to be a really good match. I think they'll win like 1-0.
Yeah, but real quick, because I'm really tired because here's 2 hours ahead. Two things I want to address. First, Corinthians president Duílio Monteiro Alves had a press conference today to talk about the upcoming season next year, but definitely he addressed the elephant in the room, which is uh, Vitor Pereira, the coach that left Corinthians a month ago, signing with Flamengo yesterday. He called Vitor Pereira a liar. He said that he had no honor, that he was disrespectful to Corinthians. He did not blame Flamengo though. He exempt Flamengo. He said Flamengo acted in honesty because Flamengo got a coach that had no contract to hire. The disappointment is with the cowardice and the stabbing in the back that Vitor Pereira did with Corinthians. But remember, Vitor Pereira left Corinthians because of his mother-in-law issues that was supposedly happening in Portugal. He wanted to stay close to home. But now the joke is, now we need to find this doctor of Vitor Pereira's mother-in-law, because what a doctor he is. He heals people very quickly.
That's look. It's never good when you're like team president. It sounds like something Jerry Jones would do. It
Oh
sounds
yeah.
like Jerry Jones would do. Just come out like, yeah, this coach, this dude backstabbed us, but I don't want to work with him anymore. No one should ever work with this guy anymore. It just sounds like a bad way to do business. And if I were a prospective coach, why would I want to go coach there? I know Corinthians is one of the top squads in Brazil, but that just sounds like a super toxic situation.
No, I think he was fair. No, I don't think he was. I think he had to go strong. I think he was even lighter. I would have called him a coward, a backstabber, all sort of names. Like, again, he used family as a reason for not renewing his contract to Corinthians. Corinthians wanted to keep him, as his head coach.
Oh,
He's
okay. So Meyer situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. 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 I understand it better now. And then
But
I guess, yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible how Vitor Pereira has not come forward in almost a month that the rumor started. He was finally Flamengo post on their social media that they've hired a coach. I mean, I want to be at Corinthians Stadium when Corinthians playing Flamengo, or as a member of the press, or as a fan, or something else. I want to be there because Corinthians fans are gonna go all in. Like they go. I don't even know what they're gonna react. It's not gonna be
It's
pretty.
going to be like when Lane Kiffin came back to Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The Vitor Pereira situation is literally like Lane Kiffin. Literally. But
Yeah.
at least Lane Kiffin was brave enough to go into that room with the reporters, talk to them, left, and told that he was going to leave. Vitor Pereira, I believe that's my conspiracy theory. There's no proof about it. I just total in my belief that he got himself a red card on the second before last game on the Brazilian National Championship. So then in the last game, he did not have to address the media. He did not have to address the fans. And he then left Corinthians president, who was in the hospital treating some, problems in his stomach, to go into make it a statement about Vitor Pereira leaving. That's cowardice beyond anything. Like, not I mean, if I don't know if he did that. I mean, I just saying as a theory that I have, but if that's come out as truth, I mean, good God, man, you know,
It's
he,
bad
he
business, very bad business.
he like Corinthians fans, I mean, I had hope on him. I thought I mean I thought, but I mean, if on the field he did a great job at Corinthians. I think he extract more than he could, more than fans expected with his roster, especially with a lot of injuries that happened mid-season. That the peak was when he got the qualification to the quarterfinals of Libertadores versus Boca Juniors in Argentina with half of the starting lineup injured. But I just, it's just sad to see how, you know, coward he was leaving the team, using his family as a family member, health issue, and then coming back to Corinthians. Not biggest rival because I think that's Palmeiras, but like a same pedigree level of team. And he said that he wouldn't coach in Brazil again, that he wanted to, you know, go in Europe, maybe work there to be close to his family, but he wanted to come back to Corinthians. That was baloney.
Yeah. That is very low down. And, I'll be very curious to see if he succeeds at his new stop. And if he
Oh,
faces adversity at Flamingo, does he start pulling same stuff again? Because this is the Urban Meyer thing, right? It's I have health conditions, I can't coach anymore, I'm going to retire. Like at Florida, like, I have heart problems, I can't coach anymore. And like, nope, okay, I want to go coach at Ohio State. I'm like, no, I have like a brain condition. Wait, no, I'm going to go coach at Jacksonville. And he finally got fired there. So, but he's well enough to still go on TV apparently. So, um,
but but the thing is, at least it was about himself. It was like maybe he was dealing with his internal issues. But Vitor Pereira, who used his mother-in-law, like, you know, I really wish to meet this lovely woman to see, how she feel being one of the most famous people in Brazil that nobody knows her name, nobody knows what she looks like, but all Corinthians fans knows about her because
and if he has this money and family's not important to him, but he wants to coach in Brazil, couldn't he just move her to Brazil?
yes. And my dad has a theory. I guess she wants the beach treatment. I guess she needs the beach to be healing. And Sao Paulo does not have a beach, but Rio de Janeiro does. And to Flamengo as well. It looks like the fetish the like a fetish Flamengo has with Portuguese head coaches because good God, Flamengo literally last year, literally this time like a little bit later, like was late December, early January, hired a Portuguese head coach, Paulo Souza,
Mm-hmm.
that was coaching the Poland national team. He failed miserably. Then Flamengo hired Brazilian coach Dorival Jr., who got not one but two titles. But no, that wasn't good enough. We need to go back to our Portuguese, head coaching line. I guess
It's
Vitor
some
Pereira.
American clubs like going for British coaches just because, oh, he's British, he must know what he's talking about when it comes to soccer.
Yeah, that's what happened to Portuguese coaches here. I mean, I guess the Vitor Pereira hiring makes sense because I guess now Flamengo is hiring a head coach from Portugal that at least has Brazilian experience. He, already knows Brazilian soccer. He's been a 1 year Corinthians, and I guess now he's gonna have in Flamengo what he did not have a Corinthians, like a preseason and loaded roster. The only issue is that Vitor Pereira with the star players had a lot of issues in the locker room with Roger Guedes, Cássio, Gil, Fagner. There were the veteran players. And Flamengo, the locker room of Flamengo is not easy to manage, with Gabriel Barbosa and Pedro, Everton Ribeiro. those are loaded stars that won everything they could with Flamengo. And Flamengo has a big challenge coming up in a couple of months with the FIFA Club World Cup. And before they think about the probable final with Real Madrid, they still have to go to the semifinals.
Yeah, so he better win with all the hubbub and commotion, because if you don't win, he's going to get fired, and then he'll be able to go back to Europe.
I just hope Flamengo does not fire him before the Corinthians Flamengo matchup in like this game, Nick. This game, I think is gonna be sold out in 1 hour. I'm scared. I want to be there, but I know even on media credential requests, it's gonna be crazy
Oh yeah,
because everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants to be, you know, yelling at Vitor Pereira. Like, imagine I would be pissed if he got a and I and again I won't doubt if he do that. Got himself a red card just to avoid facing the Corinthians fans. How coward he is!
he's no coward.
I wouldn't doubt it. I don't doubt it. He'd do that.
Like if LeBron can go and face Cleveland fans with the Miami Heat in 2010, then he can go back to Corinthians.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see next year if he's man enough to do that. And finally, the last topic: Vasco da Gama and also announced their new head coach, Mauricio Barbieri. I'm disappointed because with the new partnership with the 777 partners, they promised a lot of investment. I mean, if I was Vasco, I would have got Flamengo's former head coach, Dorival Jr. I mean, he's now in the market, after Flamengo got rid of him. Imagine Vasco da Gama getting former Flamengo head coach that just won two big titles. I think it would have more impact of a hire, but they got the safe choice. I mean, Mauricio Barbieri did a decent job at Bragantino, especially last season. The team got the runner-up in the Sul Americana competition. The second division in South America. Had a top 10 team in the Brazilian national team, but this team this year disappointed. They even did not advance in the group stage in Libertadores. Uh, Almost got relegated with a lot of investment from Red Bull. That was disappointing, but I guess Vasco wants to give him a chance. I I don't know. I think I don't know. The thing is a lot expectations because now Vasco fans are like, hey, now we have a rich partner. We expect investment. I know Vasco got a really good striker, Pedro. A really good young striker. Um, but I don't know. I think uh, Pedro Raul, he's a really good young striker. He's the first player signed by the 777 partners, but I'm still skeptical about the choice of a coach. But I feel I think he can coach at least. But that's it for Brazilian topics. I'm 1 month away from the state championship, the Paulistão. That's my World Cup. I miss dearly the Paulista Championship. Can't wait in a month to be covering soccer here again.
I'm just very interested to see where Louisville Jr. ends up as coach, because obviously it sounds like he's not going to be on the market for long, or at least shouldn't be on the market for long.
That's a good point, Nick. That's a good point.
Brazil's next coach.
I don't know. The only thing that I think it's unfair is because he had a lot of recent success, but if you think about 2 or 3 years like a stretch, I think he didn't do a good job. Again, he was just before Flamengo, he was coaching Ceará, which is a second level coach. I think Renato Gaúcho, if you think about it, in the last 5 years, he got a very good, successful run at Grêmio, winning Brazilian Cup and Libertadores and multiple state championships. Even Cuca got the Brazilian title last season, and he won a title with Palmeiras back in 2016 as well. So I don't know. I think Renato Gaúcho and Cuca are ahead of him in terms of meritocracy, but I think Dorival Jr. should land up a really good job. And he is the coach that got Flamengo a Libertadores title and a Brazilian Cup title, so he should deserve some credit.
Before we wrap up, I do want to mention that apparently Steph Curry has suffered a shoulder injury, a left shoulder injury. Will receive an MRA tomorrow on his
Yeah,
left shoulder. So we'll see if that's.
that's devastating. He,
Hold on, I'm looking at the play now. It really wasn't a hard contact injury, but yeah, I don't know. I think he just pulled something. I don't think he'll be out like for. I don't think it's like a season injury thing, but I think he may be out for like a couple of weeks, but I think he'll be fine.
yeah, I mean, he already had a big injury a couple of years ago, and
Yeah.
hopefully he'll be fine. And because definitely the Golden State Warriors need him if they want to go back to back. But
Oh,
that's it. But that's it for episode 55 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. Um, from uh, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Nicholas Hill. I'm Gus Tomazeli here in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil. Thanks for tuning in. And next week, we're definitely going to talk about the World Cup final, NFL Week 15, and much more here in
also got to
this.
celebrate some Christmas too, as well.
That's true. We are 10, 11 days away from Christmas Day. Holidays are approaching. Beautiful lights, at least here in downtown Americana. I was
Oh yeah,
surprised.
beautiful lights all
They
over the
did,
place as well.
they did a decent job here in Americana with Christmas lights. I'm impressed. I'm
That's
impressed.
great to hear. I mean, Christmas lights are our best part of the season. But as we, you know, part you this evening, we want to leave you with the words and the motto: "Swing your sword, swing your sword."
Live, live long and strong, Mike Leach.
Yes, long live Mike Leach.